Welcome to Wellsprings of Faith. My name is Father Jürgen Liias. I'm a Roman Catholic priest. I live here in Melrose, where I've actually lived here for 34 years. But I'm a priest on the staff of St. Patrick's Church in Stoneham, our neighboring town. And our program, Wellsprings of Faith, which has also been going for almost 30 years now, is a program about religious faith and the journey of faith in a person's life. We welcome today Deacon Dan Cerys. He is actually a deacon on the staff of St. Mary's Catholic Church here in Melrose. And I happened to be saying Mass there one day, and lo and behold, he served me as a deacon the first time we met, and he was willing to come on and talk about his journey in faith. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, as I said, it's a story about one's journey in faith. Go back as far as you can remember about your relationship to God and your journey in faith.
Well, I can go back pretty far. In fact, I can go back before I was born.
Ah, okay.
In the sense that we were talking earlier about, our family heritage. And my grandmother, she grew up she was born in Poland, and came to this country when she was like 13 years old. She and a cousin.
What year was that?
Around 1902 or so.
Yeah, you mentioned they went to Ellis Island before the show.
Yeah.
A famous place.
And so she came here, just two young girls.
Did you know her when you were?
She was the only grandparent I did know.
Oh, you did. And what does she besides the experience? But what precipitated her moving here or coming here?
I think it was just life was hard.
Just poverty.
And she was a farm sort of situation. She didn't really want to talk about that. But the reason I mention her is in terms of my faith. She was the only grandparent I knew, but she was the most holy person I knew.
Wow.
She taught me how to pray. As a kid,
Wow.
I learned to pray the rosary with her and do my bedtime prayers and those kind of things. So she was definitely a cornerstone, a foundation of my initial faith journey.
You know, there's a wonderful passage in Timothy. Paul's writing to Timothy, and of course, Timothy is sort of his spiritual son. And he said, I first saw your faith in your grandmother, and then in your mother.
Yes.
Lois, I think, was the grandmother's name, and Eunice. I forget which was which. But it's a very moving thing, and I often tell older ladies, there's always sweet, holy old ladies in the church. It's one of the rich treasures of the church, these deep faith. And a lot of them are sad because their kids aren't going to church or their grandchildren. And I said, your influence, you just can be profound. So many people, I've been to this show, so many people said it was my grandmother, her piety that.
And you don't realize it at the time.
No, of course not.
It's not until you've actually progressed in maturity in your faith that you realize the impact that person had on your life.
Did she live with you, or did
she lived very nearby?
Oh, nearby. So she was very present in your life as well.
So I grew up in a very small Polish enclave in a town up in the northwest corner of Wisconsin on Lake Superior.
Oh, really?
Middle of nowhere.
Wow.
Actually, north of the middle of nowhere. And there was this little 4-block area of Polish people.
Catholic
and
people.
So my family, I grew up in one of those little houses. Grandma lived a few blocks away, and of course there was a Polish Catholic church in the middle of that that we went to. My dad went there as a kid to school. He learned Polish as a language, and every Sunday, 5 kids in my family, we'd all kind of march down. We could just walk there 3 blocks away. Walk into the church, and the 3 boys, 2 girls. We'd get our hair fixed up and stuff, and we would sit properly with mom, dad, and grandma every Sunday, and it was a beautiful, beautiful church to go to. Ironically, it was and then a lot of these ethnic sort of focused churches, they had their peak. People started moving around a bit. And so this one, kind of the core mass faded away. And to be honest, it was kind of hard to justify having this separate church there because the cathedral was 3 blocks away. Yeah.
Well, but I mean, New England is like that too.
Yes.
There you can go to a certain community, and there are 3 Catholic churches, all like basically a block away from each other.
Right.
Of course, one's the Italian Catholic,
Yeah,
one's the Irish Catholic,
Yeah.
the one might be the Polish Catholic or the Lithuanian
But then
Catholic.
they start intermarrying.
Yeah, right. And it lasts, obviously, in those waves
Yes.
of immigration, but
Yes.
you get to the next generation, certainly by the 3rd generation, you know, it's dissipated, the
Right.
ethnic quality of
Yeah.
people's lives.
Yeah.
Unless a new wave of immigrants come in. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we now got, as you know, we have Brazilian churches
Yeah,
and
yes,
obviously a lot of
yes.
Hispanic
Right.
churches
Yeah.
and Vietnamese churches, those groups.
Filipino.
Yeah.
Et cetera. So the, you know, so our progression, we lived in this little house by this Polish Catholic church until I was, you know, 4 or 5 years old. And then we moved across town, like 4 blocks away, to a bigger house because we had 5 kids at that point.
Right.
And this was closer to the cathedral, so we started going to the cathedral. And there I became an altar boy. And went to Catholic school, you know, from 1st grade to 9th grade.
9th grade.
And
Was there much devotion in your home? Or?
Not really. We would do the occasional prayer before meals.
Meals, right.
I would pray, you know, before
But it
going to
wasn't sort of
bed.
intense as your grandmother would be doing.
No. When she
praying
was
with your
when
children,
she was with
just
me,
doing the
there
rosary.
was a lot more prayer going on.
Yeah, she was still the
Yeah.
source of spirituality for you.
Yeah, my parents were
They were
definitely
devout. Right,
devout.
right.
They were believers. In fact, my mother, my dad was Polish, but my mother was Norwegian.
Oh.
So she actually wasn't raised a Catholic.
Well, I was
She
going to say,
raised
she would have
Lutheran.
been a Lutheran.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
I was, being German, I was Lutheran.
Sure.
And my parents, and my father was Estonian, he was Lutheran, and my mother
Yeah.
was Lutheran.
Yeah. But once she had married and had kids,
Yeah.
me, I was the oldest, she converted,
Converted. Yeah.
became a Catholic, and raised us as great Catholics in the household. Like I said, I was an altar boy, and at the cathedral, that was a big deal because there's a lot of things going on there. And it was also a great thing because the school was across the street, and I could get out for funerals and things to serve it.
Yeah, serving, yeah. In a way, that's also been a kind of a lost tradition in the church of children serving.
Yes.
We still have service, but if they show up at all, it's a much more sort of haphazard thing than the kind of training of young boys, and you would actually leave school to do the funerals and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Wow. So it's interesting also, Wisconsin, though. When I became a Catholic, I was about 10, I was an Episcopal priest and a Protestant until but it was interesting, the first summer I was a Catholic priest, just after I was ordained by Cardinal Mellick, this woman comes up to me, I need a chaplain, would you like to be chaplain for to go to the Marian shrines of Wisconsin with me? And you know, there are a bunch of Marian shrines.
Yes.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
first of all, I didn't even know what a Marian shrine was, never mind that there were a bunch of them in Wisconsin. But I gather the one approved Marian apparition in the United States is it's outside of Green Bay.
Yeah, I've not been there.
Yeah, I've been there. Yeah, and they were it's a little church, but there are crutches everywhere. And, you know, those things quite something. So, go ahead. We haven't even got out of your childhood.
I know. Let me grow up now.
I'm sorry. I keep interrupting and talking about me.
That's fine. It's great. It's all relative. So I went to Catholic school through 9th grade, and then we had no Catholic high school. So I went to the city high school. It was my class was like 500 people, so it was a pretty diverse crew. So I had my core buddies and from the Catholic school, but now I had all these other folks that I interacted with. So I kept my faith active in the sense that we did Bible studies and things like that. But now it wasn't a Catholic Bible study. Now it was an ecumenical Bible study.
In terms of the general culture of Wisconsin, at least in your childhood, was it predominantly, as we think of it, Germans and and Norwegians and Swedes, and Lutheran.
Yes.
So were you a minority as a Catholic, or was there a large Catholic population as well?
There were a lot of Catholics.
Yeah, there were.
Yeah, yeah. There were quite a few Catholic churches.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, and there was another Catholic grade school
Yes.
that was merged with
Merged.
us. So yeah. So
Yeah.
I interacted with a lot of Catholics, but also a lot of Protestants of various
Right,
types.
right.
And one of my good friends was a Jewish boy too. So it was all very open and
Open right in
diverse.
the school.
Yeah. Anyway, so so there it was, it was okay. It was just formative process through high school, and then again I'm up in Wisconsin, and then I said, well, where do I want to go to college? Well, fortunately I had some good options, Midwest, East Coast, and then West Coast. And it was kind of a no-brainer. So I decided to go to California, to go to Stanford. And that was just a wonderful decision
Yeah, yeah.
on multiple aspects. There was a very robust Newman Center
Really?
On campus. It was very diverse. They had a non-sectarian church. They called it a chapel, but it was like a cathedral
Right, and
on campus.
everybody used it.
Everybody used it. So the Catholic community, we had a mass there, and we had another mass in the student center every weekend. So 2 big masses for the Catholic students.
What's the population in Stanford generally of undergrads?
I wish I remembered that correctly.
Right.
I think it was my class might have been 1,000.
1,000, yeah.
Yeah.
That's sort of the impression. It's a big school.
Yeah, yeah.
It's an elite school, but a very big one.
Yeah. So that was all very good.
And you never, did you have any faith crises or rebellions or?
Not in
No, it seems
not in
like
college yet.
No, yeah.
Not in college
yeah,
yet.
yeah.
In fact, I did think deeply about faith and about my role in the church. So in fact, I had discussions with the local pastor and also my pastor back
at home.
in Wisconsin about priesthood. And after kind of a year of discernment, I realized that probably wasn't the vocation that God was calling me for.
So you were pretty serious about your faith all along.
Yeah.
It was an important piece of who you were.
It was.
And maintained itself.
Yeah. So I got a great education. I got a great faith formation there. I also got a bonus in the sense that I met my future wife the spring of my senior year. Timing was great.
Yeah, that was great.
Very few distraction until the very end. We fell in love, and then had a kind of a long distance relationship because I stayed at Stanford, got my master's. She went to UCLA. But we kept the relationship going.
Yeah. Was she Catholic?
She was not. She was actually baptized. Well, she was born a Catholic, never baptized. So it was one of those kind of family, distant Catholic sort of background. So she, as a teenager, she was baptized as a Methodist.
So she came to faith in the Lord.
She did.
Obviously, and made a decision for herself.
As an adult.
Right.
An age of reason sort of person.
Right, good,
So I guess let me just continue on her faith journey in respect to mine. So we went to Austin, Texas, lived there for a few years. I continued to be active in the Catholic Church there. It was a very robust Catholic community there, and then I had an offer from my company to.
Well, by the way, what did you decide to do for work? I forgot. What vocation did you?
Yeah, well, it was a kind of a weird pathway.
Yeah.
When I went as an undergraduate, as a freshman, I was going to be a doctor, a general practice sort of doctor, and then I talked to real doctors besides my home doctor, and I realized that wasn't the business I wanted to get into. So I was a biologist.
A biologist.
But then I got sucked into technology and applying computer science to biology. And so I I basically, I was a computer scientist,
Scientist.
trained as a computer scientist.
And were you sort of involved in research,
Yeah,
basically?
yeah. Uh-huh.
And what kind of companies did you work for?
So I worked, the first company was Texas Instruments.
Oh, okay. They're famous, well-known.
Yeah, and we built an AI workstation.
Oh, wow.
Back in the
then.
early
Wow.
days of AI.
Yeah.
There have been multiple early days of AI. Now is another one. But we built an AI workstation, and as part of that effort, they were looking for somebody to come over to MIT and work as a liaison with them. I raised my hand and said, I can go there for a while. And it was a beautiful experience to come to Boston.
So that's your journey, how you wound up here. Yeah.
Exactly.
Now, I don't know if I told you this when that we only met that one time,
Yeah.
that my wife also is in computer field.
Right.
She went to Smith and she worked at Lincoln Lab at
Yeah.
MIT. So
Yes.
her career was at MIT as well.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah.
It was a great
She's
place.
the brains, yeah.
I loved it. I was there for a little over 2 years as a visiting scientist, and then the TI wanted me to come back to Dallas and come home, and I politely declined because I really enjoyed Boston so much. And here we lived in Melrose at that time.
Oh, okay. That's how
so-
you wound up here.
Yeah, Melrose is
And you have children by then?
no, we don't have any
Oh,
children.
you don't have
Yeah.
children, yeah.
So we lived in this little house, down by the Armory, and it was very, very nice. Tended to live there for a couple of years, and we went to St. Mary's at that time, and fell in love with St. Mary's. Great parish.
What years would this have been now?
I think we moved here in the late 80s.
80s, okay.
Yeah, late 80s.
Okay. Because I've had a long relationship with St. Mary's even before I became a Catholic, because my children went to school there.
At the St. Mary's
I
School.
was an
yeah.
Episcopal priest in Malden for
Yeah.
14 years.
Okay.
That's where our kids grew up.
Uh-huh.
But I'll never forget, I had the principal of the local elementary school where my children should have gone, told me, Jürgen, don't send your kids to my school. It's a terrible school.
He was honest.
So I figured if he wouldn't support, so I wound up looking around, and I happened to know the priest at St. Mary's. I've forgotten his name now. But,
Ronigan?
or maybe he was the one who was running the school. I think it was a Franciscan or something. I think it was a religious brother running the school at the time. And I happened to know him, and he said, oh, bring your kids to my school. So that's what I did.
Great, good. So anyway, so we came to St. Mary's, and we were involved in church, in terms of some of the activities. There were a lot of these small
Now,
groups.
when along this journey did your wife become a Catholic? You mentioned you were going to
Not for a while.
Not for a while.
So the trick there is that we would often go to daily mass. She was actually more, she was able to get to daily mass more than I could.
So she was quite fervent in her faith.
Yeah, but she wasn't a Catholic.
And how did, does she talk about how did she become a Christian? You said it was in high school. She
Yes.
had a real kind of conversion.
Right. Yeah. I can't reflect that pretty well.
Oh yeah.
But I can reflect how she became a Catholic, which was she was going to mass again more often than I was, daily mass, and one of the priests asked her, Phyllis, you're coming to mass every day, but at communion you just come up for a blessing, which is what we do.
Yeah, that's right.
If
In the
we're not
Catholic Church.
ready to
Right,
accept.
right.
And so she was not a Catholic, so she couldn't do that. And so one of the priests asked her, Phyllis, why are you not receiving communion? Is there something you want to talk about? And she said, well, Father, I'm not a Catholic.
Very simple answer.
Pretty simple.
And it's good that she honored that discipline.
Yes,
Not everyone
yeah.
does, but that's a real integrity about,
Yeah.
I love being here, but I'm, not a Catholic.
Yeah. But the thing she appreciated was the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist.
She really experienced his real, yeah.
And she realized that wasn't present in the Methodist Church
Right.
or the Protestant churches she was exposed to.
Right.
And in response to that priest questioning her, she went through the RCI
that's
formation
started
program, which is how Catholics, or how people become Catholics
Right,
as
right.
adults. And then she was baptized, or she was already baptized, but she received First Communion and confirmation as a Catholic about maybe 15 years ago.
Yes. Oh, wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, as you know, I was an Anglican Episcopal priest. I became a Catholic and a Catholic priest. My wife did not come with me.
Oh.
She's still an Anglican,
Really?
an Episcopalian. And that's another story too. But fortunately, it's quite interesting in terms of Eucharistic discipline. She was baptized Antiochian Orthodox. She's Lebanese and came from the Orthodox. And the Catholic Church actually allows Orthodox to receive communion.
Okay.
They don't return the favor, if you know
Yeah,
discipline.
I've heard of this.
But it's a funny little thing. So
Yeah.
I asked, when I became a Catholic, I asked my bishop about, and he said because my wife was Orthodox, she could receive communion when she came
Yeah.
to the Mass. So she goes to the Episcopal Church, but Anglican Church, because there's no Antiochian Church around here. And, but when she comes to the Catholic Church occasionally, she will receive communion. So it's
Great.
a funny little minutiae of
Yeah.
Catholic rules.
Uh-huh.
So let's get to your diaconate before our time runs out.
Sure.
When did that? You're now an ordained deacon in the
I am.
diocese, and
Well, recently. I mean, just a year plus,
or
a year and
brand new
2 months
deacon,
ago. Yeah.
baby deacon as they call
Well,
it.
I'm no longer the baby. So
Oh.
we just ordained another
class
right
but
behind me.
So that's a class here.
And
you're wearing, I don't know if the camera could show this wonderful little cross that shows the stole. That's one of the distinct difference between the priest and the deacon. Is
The
way
diagonal
that
stole.
They wear, the way they wear their stole is
Right.
a sign of that.
Yeah.
So how did that emerge?
so I didn't know what a deacon was, to be honest. St. Mary's hadn't had a deacon other than transitional deacons that were
on their way to the
seminarians.
priesthood, right.
Yeah. And so we never had a permanent deacon for 30 years or so. There was one who was just there when I got there in the late 80s, but he wasn't there, during most of my time.
Most of the time, yeah.
So my awareness wasn't there. So I was active in the church. I was a lector, Eucharist minister, involved in small group sort of faith activities. But I was looking for something more to express my commitment to the church. Didn't know what it would be. And then one day I was sitting in a seminar where every week or once a month we met, where we'd have spiritual kind of topics. And one week the head of the diaconate in the archdiocese, Chris Conley,
Yes.
came and gave a little 1 hour overview of the diaconate.
Oh.
Bells went
Bells,
off.
oh, immediately, wow.
I realized that was exactly what I was looking for. And I thought about it for a year, and then entered the formation program. It's a 4-year, well, it's
Yes,
really
it's
a
a pretty intense
it's really a
program, I
5-year
know
program.
that,
So
yeah.
you apply for 1 year with a lot of interviews and essays and things like that, and then it's 4 years of study.
The formation and study.
And it's 4 years of study, not just for you, but for also if you're married. It's
Yeah,
also
your
for
wife, is expected to
Yeah, so
be part
deacons
of this
deacons
process.
can be married,
Right, right.
and very typically they are.
Someone joked we're the only one. Well, of course, I'm the exception as a priest, but
Right.
but the deacons said we're the only ones who can receive all 7 sacraments.
That's right. That's right. So for the first year, Phyllis had to join me for all the classes
Right,
and
and
formation
weekend
activities.
retreats too, all that.
It
Yeah,
was.
it's
It was a
wonderful.
great process. Very academically, it was even for a guy who went to college. It was rigorous. I mean, there were guys that did not go to college in my class that really struggled. There was a lot of cooperation amongst the group to help them
supporting
along.
each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, fortunately at St. Patrick's, we've got a whole slew of deacons.
You do.
And it's been, just for people who perhaps don't know, I mean, the ministry of the deacons goes all the way back, of course, to Acts, but Vatican II, really it was kind of a recovery of the order of deacons, which had its own integrity, not just a transitional one for people becoming priests. And it's been a really extraordinarily rich, I think, addition to the ministry of the church.
Yeah. So like I said, I was ordained September of last year.
So what's been some of the real blessings and riches of that experience, and what have been some of the challenges of your new diaconal
Let me
work?
focus on the riches first. The riches, I mean, one is just assisting at Mass, being right there at the altar. The deacon is the minister of the cup, so you're a fundamental part of the whole Eucharistic. You're the main support person.
That's right.
You set the table. You know for the at the altar. You pour the wine and the water. You get everything ready for the consecration for the priest, and then the real beauty part is I had been an extraordinary Eucharist minister for many years before I was ordained. But when you're ordained as a deacon or a priest, you are now
the ordinary.
You're an ordinary,
not the extraordinary.
And providing the Eucharist,
which sounds like you think extraordinary is more higher, but it's actually the ordinary.
Yeah. So I get such joy in watching the faces of people at communion time.
That's
the highlight. That's the highlight.
And of course, another important part of your role as a deacon is reading the gospel.
Yes.
And you get to preach as well.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I have to say, as a new Catholic, I prefer a lot of the deacons preaching to the priest. I don't know. I've found some of the best preaching I've heard has come from the deacons. My experience.
Well, we get a lot of practice during formation. Right. So I preach once a month.
Once a month.
Just so this weekend.
Right. Now, was it generally you don't necessarily go back to the parish you were sponsored by?
No.
So, but that's worked out nicely for you.
It has.
Kind of.
I was assigned to my home parish, St. Mary's, which about half the guys are, but the other half are not. It's wherever the need is.
Right, I know.
Well, not wherever, within a region.
Well, of course, even the priests are technically under the bishop.
Yes.
But you're in a special way a deacon of the diocese rather than a deacon of a parish.
Exactly, right.
And you could be moved around. So what else? So what have been some of the challenges? Those were your riches.
Yeah. Well, let me talk about other riches.
Okay,
too.
go ahead.
I did want to mention two other ones. One is doing pastoral visits in the hospital.
Yes.
We're blessed at St. Mary in Melrose Wakefield at the hospital here to have a wonderful priest who's the chaplain.
Yeah, he's been on this show.
Father Hughes.
Yeah, and he is a very gifted priest.
Wonderful, and big shoes to fill. So what I do is I fill his shoes on some of his days off.
Right.
And visiting patients, and you never know what to expect. It can range from just a 3-minute encounter. Well, it can range from a 30-second encounter, like go away. I've gotten a lot of those.
Yeah.
To a 1-minute thing where you just pray the Our Father and you walk away, perhaps provide the Eucharist as part of that, or you can spend 45 minutes to an hour and helping them through their crisis of faith. I can't hear confessions as a deacon, but I can help them in their journey.
Yeah, and there are a lot of things that that aren't confession, which are confession.
Yes.
There's a people really pouring out their lives and souls.
Right.
It's always a great sacred ground to be in that kind of
Positively.
relationship. Yeah.
And let me mention one other joy before I talk about the challenges. Another joy is baptisms. I love doing baptism. I had this beautiful family just last weekend, and it was joyous because you're bringing a new child into God's kingdom, and having the support of the mom, dad, godparents, all the relatives, and this was a pretty large grouping gathering. In fact, we had a baptism at 2:00 is when we started, and I left the church at 3:10, and they were still socializing and enjoying the beauty of what just happened.
It is again this sacred ground of there's a kind of a joke goes that we hatch, match, and dispatch, in terms of the ministry. But in fact, it's just holy ground that you're in these very special, deep, deep moments in people's lives. You are privileged to be a partner in what's going on with them. We only have 1 minute left, so give a minute on the challenges.
Okay, well, there's a couple challenges,
Yeah.
but let me go back to the hospital situation. There, some of those encounters with patients can be challenges. I had one guy who, like I mentioned, the short duration visits. I get into his bed, his room. He's on his bed with his cell phone in hand, typing away. Introduce myself, and he says, "Go away. I don't want to talk. I don't want to buy anything from you today." I come back a week later. Same man. This guy, he's in his 40s.
Yeah.
He's not that old. He's still exactly the same position. It's like he's glued there. He must have an incredible battery life on his phone. And he's doing the same thing, introduction, and it's a replay. It's like one of those things, except that right after he says that, he then says, "I apologize. I apologize for blowing you off last week." And this is one of those encounters that turned into a 45-minute discussion of his faith.
How beautiful it is, the Holy Spirit. The ordained ministry is this. I was preaching about the priesthood a couple of months ago. This liminal ministry, where on this threshold between the spiritual and the physical, between eternity and time, between the divine and the human. And it's just, it is sacred ground. But also people, people are mad at God or angry at the church and all kinds of stuff. And it's not you, but you're that kind of, and just to be present sometimes.
Just sit with them, actively listen.
Yeah, and sometimes be crucified, rejected, and spat at in a sense. But then,
Don't take
those
it
moments
personally.
of grace.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you so much.
Sure, this has been a pleasure.
Blessings on your new vocation. And it's great to meet you, and I hope our paths cross not just around town, but hopefully at the altar again. Sometimes I have the privilege of saying Mass.
Great.
I hope you've enjoyed this wonderful conversation with Deacon Dan here. If you are from Melrose, I hope you might, head over to St. Mary's, even if like his wife used to be, just even if you're not a Catholic, you can just participate, and when you come for communion, just put your hands up for a blessing, but share in the rich life of the church and there. And so may God bless you in your own spiritual journey as well. Thank you.